All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is the Cali B podcast, and here we are learning how to own it. No matter what, we continue to show up. And I have someone who is near and dear to my heart because she kind of has this legacy about her. She had no idea that I was stalking her from afar. But I have to ask you, Jill, with Fastpitch Power, are you related to Phil?
Yes, my dad.
Ah, I was right. I did not know that.
I'm honestly surprised how many people don't know that. Yeah, he's my dad. He started Fastpitch Power.
Yes.
So like Fastpitch Power originated in like, I want to say like 2010, but even prior to that, he's been giving pitching lessons in New York where he is so my sister was a pitcher too. She's 3 years older than me, and I started pitching when I was 9. So since then, and then Fastpitch Power was officially developed in like 2010-ish.
I love that. I was like, I kept telling my husband, I was like, should I wait or should I save it for the show? I was like, because I don't know. And I just had this feeling that he was, but I didn't want to assume. I was like, they could just be business partners that, could be your uncle. I don't know. But your dad is like, I like to tell people when they offer something to me, like something different. And, I was a hello elbow pitcher, and here came this fast pitch power all over YouTube because he was running YouTube before anyone else was running YouTube. Like that was your dad's platform.
Yes.
He did a great job in his backyard with his little dirt mound, like in the fence. Like, oh yeah, I watched a lot. And when he went through those videos about the whip, I was like, he's onto something. Like, I really need to look into this. And then all of a sudden, like from the whip, we really had that focus with internal hip rotation, and like everything just started making sense. So I myself kind of became a student of your dad's from afar. And then here you come into the picture, and I'm like, who is this girl? Like, I love what she's doing.
He is going to be like, so like his head is going to be huge. He's just going to be so, like thrilled that we've brought him up. So I'll definitely have to show him this.
Yeah.
But it's funny. Yeah. I would say he's like, as far as YouTube goes, because like really YouTube and like social media, I mean, all of the pitchers these days grew up with social media. We didn't, you know what I mean?
Right.
But like YouTube has been around. So like since YouTube became popular, I feel like he was kind of the first
to really
come out and talk about whip and 4-on-fire. However, it's really interesting that you bring that up because when parents and other coaches hear the term like 4-on-fire, they think that we invented it. It's actually, if you want to hear like the story of how he got into it, it's actually really kind of cool.
Yeah, let's go.
He played hockey. He was a hockey player.
Okay.
And his dream in life was to actually coach like an elite girls hockey team. And neither me or my sister wanted anything to do with that. So we just were not like into that at all. My older sister started playing softball. And of course, me being like the little sister tagging, I was like, I want to play softball too. I want to be a pitcher too. So we ended up going to just a local pitching coach. It was just an old like Italian guy teaching the classic open door, closed door, snap up the elbow. And my sister and I were both going there. My dad was watching. He was like, this seems a little weird. But obviously, way back then, think about how many coaches are still teaching hello elbow. Back then it was like, even though if you were to really go and watch college pitchers at that time, none of them were doing hello elbow. That's still pretty much all that was taught, especially back then. That was it.
Yeah.
So my dad took it upon himself. He started studying the pitchers on TV. He started going to like conferences. Like I remember there was a really popular conference in like Cherry Hill, New Jersey that took place every year. And he actually learned the term 4-on-fire and what whip and internal rotation really was. We use that term 4-on-fire because we feel like it's like, if you say internal rotation to a 9-year-old, they're not necessarily going to know what you're talking about. He learned it. I'm not sure many will know her name, but I believe she played for UCLA. Her name is Casey Clark. Okay. And she was a pitcher who was very pro internal rotation. And she actually, I remember her coming to our area and giving a clinic with like me and some of my other like friends who were also pitchers. And he would study like all these videos he studied from her and like some other coaches who were kind of like talking about whip versus hello elbow. And he was like, this sounds a lot more like normal athletic movements. So he started learning it. He started teaching it. He started giving like the clinics he would give in our area, just like constantly sold out because you couldn't find anyone else who would teach that style. And he still, you know, he has stepped away from like the big clinics now, but he still gives lessons in his on his little dirt mound in his backyard. He refuses to learn how to use like a computer, so he will not do the like the online stuff like I do. But yeah, so people think that we kind of came up with the term forearm fire. We didn't. We learned it from Casey Clark, and we took that. And I just kind of call it whip now because I feel like that's a really easy way to understand it. But that's where we got it from, and we have, you know, continued to keep learning about, you know, the mechanics and how the body should move naturally, what's most like alike other athletic movements, what's safest. So, you know, injury prevention is obviously number one for us. And it's really kind of just taken off since then. So yeah, he wanted to coach a hockey team. It didn't work out like that.
Like what happened? That is
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, down here, so I'm in Arizona and there's a lot of instructors, you know, they kind of, I would say they try to be like California in the aspect of if you're on a travel team and you practice 4 days a week, you have to have 2 pitching lessons a week and 2 hitting lessons a week, like in order to keep up. Yeah, so I'm always like, well, let's run the statistics on the kids that actually go on and play college ball and aren't completely burnt out, you know?
I like what
So,
happened to rest.
yes. So it's just funny because I always like, I can kind of filter the parents that are someone that I would like to work with because they will ask a direct question, you know, are you a whip pitching coach or a hello elbow pitching coach? And I'm like, you are my people if you are a whip
Yeah.
pitching. But what's cool
Yeah.
is I tell people my story of like how I used to come through and snap all the way up.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not very tall. Like when I was pitching, I was 5'3". I've already lost 2 inches. And this just gives me so much more.
That was the same thing with Casey Clark, and that was what made her so special and made my dad be like, "This is what you want to do." I think she was your same height, and
Yeah,
she was in the 70s in
that's
school.
awesome. I love
Everyone's always like, "Oh, you have to be that 6 foot tall pitcher to hit the upper 60s and 70s. You have to be that 6 foot tall pitcher to get like really seriously recruited by, you know, the D1 coaches." It's not true. It's all about mechanics, loose whip, explosiveness, which, you know, does height help? Sure. But you have that ability to throw that hard if you're taught the correct way,
right.
for sure.
And that's, I don't know if you know Rita Lynn Gillum.
Yep.
She's
I
in
know.
the South. Yep. So you got to come out to the National Fast Pitch Coaches Association.
Oh,
I would love for you to come.
I would
Get
love
somebody to
to.
watch the kids and you get there and let's meet up and let's talk. Like it would be
I would
awesome.
love to. I really would. My kids would like destroy the place though, probably. But so I'd have to leave them here with Nona and Gramps. So yeah, my dad, Coach Phil is Gramps. So
I love it. Well, she is really she emphasizes a lot on the spin, and I love that because
love that.
you know that spin is in that top 5 characteristic of speed of ball, you know. And one thing she really stresses is the importance of understanding when speed comes. And I really like this because I've always preached you have to have good mechanics in order to get the speed that's waiting to be had. But if you have improper mechanics, the speed that you should be throwing, like on that progression line, isn't going to get there. You're going to peak way too early. Um,
Exactly.
then injuries sneak in.
I was going to say, and then injuries, really high chance of injuries. I was reading something online the other day, and it was someone had taken, I can't remember who it was, but someone had basically taken like a former way in the past, like really successful pitcher who had like fairly unconventional mechanics, like things that you would not normally teach now.
Mhm.
And basically their point was like, well, maybe we shouldn't, you know, put such a strong focus on mechanics if like this pitcher was so successful. And I'm like, yes and no, because every pitcher is different. You might have a pitcher who like maybe she has really bad scoliosis, or like I personally have worked with, I have a pitcher right now I work with who was born with hip dysplasia. I've worked with a pitcher who fractured her femur. And as much physical therapy and things as you do, there's still gonna be like weaknesses in those area. And there might be like certain positions that certain pitchers just can't fully get to. And that's okay. But what people don't talk about with these like really successful pitchers in the past who have like honestly what I would consider to be not so great mechanics, you don't know what kind of injuries or constant pain they were dealing with in that time. Maybe they were constantly in the trainer or constantly with a physical therapist because something was always hurting and they had to just keep maintaining just in order to like pitch.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, maybe they could have even thrown even harder with even better spin if they had addressed some of their mechanics. And I wish people would take the focus off of like, I want to throw hard really, really fast. So I want to, I want to throw hard really, really fast. I want to, be really successful really, really fast, like immediately. And they take that focus off of developing good mechanics. And like you said, injuries happen, plateaus happen as they get older. They lose that speed and command. Or the little girl who was, slower and not as, successful right off the bat as she was, has surpassed her now because she took that time to develop the right mechanics. So just because you see like a successful or famous pitcher with like less conventional mechanics, you don't know like what went on. You don't know what kind of like if they were feeling any pain. You don't know what would have happened if maybe they had fixed that certain part of mechanics. So yes, everyone is different. No two pitchers are going to look 100% exactly the same. But to say that you shouldn't focus on mechanics to me is like not good. So.
Right. And I agree with you because I think probably here, I mean, your dad kind of lit the fire, and now we've got quality coaches that are coming into the online spectrum, on social media, and they're feeding. And I don't know about you, but all of a sudden in the last 5 years, I've created this like community of other quality fast pitch pitching coaches. And I love it because I believe we all agree that mechanics matter. And I love how we like have this almost like co-op effect of drills. Like if I see you do something, I will shoot it out and I tag you in it. Um, Courtney Hudson with Coach at a Click, Carrie Foster with Foster's Fast Pitch, Danielle with DR3, like elite softball doctor. Like I will name some people that I just adore because they genuinely care about their athletes. But I have came across pitching coaches who are like, mechanics just don't matter. And I'm just like, there is a certain way to walk, there is a certain way to run,
Yeah.
There's a healthy way to move. And it has to go towards your pitcher. Like yourself, I've worked with pitchers that have had spinal issues. I've had two that have had really, really bad curves to where they've had the scoliosis, they've had to get surgery.
There's not
And
much you can do about that. You kind of, there's a point where you have to look at that picture and be like, this is the range of motion she has available, and that's what I have to work with.
yeah.
But you still have to, like, what I feel like is important is the understanding that yes, every pitcher is going to look different, but it's important for every pitcher, every parent, every coach to at least understand and recognize what the optimal and healthiest mechanics look like, and strive to get as close to that as possible, knowing that like nobody in this entire world probably has 100% perfect mechanics, because we're not robots and everyone has different body types, structural differences. Lefties versus righties, you're going to see lefties stay more open than righties because they, like, if you watch a pitcher on TV, a lefty, they're going to look really open, whereas a righty is going to have a lot more rotation. That's just how like lefties versus righties structurally.
Yeah, the rib cage is bigger on that side, and they have to pitch around their
exactly right.
Yep.
So but to just ignore mechanics and say like, well, this pitcher in the past did all these weird things, so maybe like mechanics aren't that important. It just says like, well, now you're putting your pitcher at higher risk for injury. Now you're putting your pitcher at higher risk for plateauing and not reaching her fullest potential. So yes, you have to make adaptations for every pitcher because you don't know what's going on with them structurally. Um, but at the same time, I think it's really important to understand what optimal mechanics look like and try to get as close to that as possible. And like you said, there's a right way to walk. There's also so many similarities between pitching and every other athletic movement. That's the example I always give when I'm explaining hello elbow versus whip. So if you try to think about any sport, not like remove pitching, think about an overhand throw, think about swinging a bat, think about a tennis serve, think about a golf swing, think about throwing a football, the quarterback throwing a football. Are there any athletic movements in this world that go from having a straight arm to a bent arm?
Ooh, I like that. No, there is not.
Someone once said bowling, but I'm not even really entirely sure about that.
But we don't
Every
want to look like bowling when we're
I
pitching.
know.
So I don't even think we can put that in for comparison because if we see a girl looking like she's bowling while she's pitching, we've got a huge issue.
You've got a big problem. Exactly. But every other athletic movement goes from elbow bend to elbow extend. So why are we teaching pitchers to go from a straight arm to a bent arm, or even a bent arm to a more bent arm? That would be like if you were throwing overhand and all of a sudden you went like this, like when you,
Right.
what would happen? Nothing good.
No.
So that's usually the first way I explain whip versus hello elbow to other people. There's no other athletic power movement in the world that is going to have you finish with a bent elbow.
Right.
So,
No, I love that analogy. I'm definitely going to
yeah,
clip that out and put that on repeat.
yeah. That was
But
my dad. My dad always talks about that. He's full of those good analogies.
no, he was very passionate about it. You could see it. I mean, it was so much so that I was like, who is this guy? Like, oh my gosh, that makes sense. I mean, I've been a pitching coach for 2.5 decades. Like since I was 18, I gave back to my little league and went on to play college ball, continued to coach, did lessons. Like I've coached every like rec, little league, high school travel, even at the college level. Like it's nuts.
Awesome.
And just to see your dad's analogy just break it down, I was like, oh my gosh. Like, so I'll take the towel, right? And I just show the girls the whip. I'm like, it's as simple as that. Like quit overthinking it. Because I think when they see, and I know this is big for you, this is gonna hit you because this is your favorite thing to repeat. But the explanation of the hand ending, the back of the hand ending sky up, like everybody sees that and they don't pay attention to what's happening up to that point.
Yep.
And so I'll start teaching the whip mechanics to girls. And it's so funny because they're so quick to force their hand over. And I'm like, no, just let it whip through. Like it
Yes.
naturally will happen.
And I think that is a really big misconception because I still, to this day, like whenever I do a new video analysis or work with a new pitcher, they'll say, well, her previous coach said that whip is going to cause her to have like elbow pain and ultimately like Tommy John surgery. I think that there is a common misconception that when you're doing whip, you are side arming the pitch.
Ooh.
And that is not happening. So I think that there are people who think you come down the back side of the arm circle and then go like this as you're delivering.
Oh
And
no.
yes, and I think, or like you're forcing, like we always talk about forcing the hand
Yeah.
over. And that, again, I try to pin all these videos to the top of my profiles and be like, look at this. This is an explanation of what actually happens as your arm travels down the backside of the arm circle. I just think that for these coaches who are still teaching hello elbow or any other kind of delivery method are just not fully understanding what whip actually is, what it actually looks like, what it's actually like correctly supposed to look like. So then they're saying like, oh no, that's gonna give you pain. That's not something you want to learn, when it's just kind of like a misconception about what actually happens. I still have pretty much every day the comments and the messages like, how does the hand turn over at the end? Isn't that going to hurt your arm? And
That's how you throw a turnover drop too. So, if people want to complain, are we just going to take the turnover drop out of the equation and everybody's
yeah,
just going to start throwing a peel?
exactly.
Like,
Exactly. Oh,
just
crazy.
what was I going to say? It was actually really good and just like left my brain.
I'm
um,
sorry.
one of the things, okay, so it's funny that people up your way talk about elbow pain with the whip. I personally have worked with, and I still work with formerly Hello Elbow pitchers who have came to me with extreme elbow pain. And then I'll ask them, this is, you're going to love this because this might even light a fire in you too.
So
Um,
many thoughts.
I personally feel like the screwball is the last pitch to learn because it's equivalent to a curveball in baseball. And curveballs in baseball are the pitch, when it's overused, will cause Tommy John surgery. So I hold off on the screwball, but down here, it's if it's not their second, it's their third pitch they learn. So these baby girls are throwing hello elbow and screwballs by the time they're 10 to their 12, and they're coming to me with elbow pain. Like
Oh,
I'm like,
yeah.
no.
Okay. Yeah. So yes, lighting a fire. So first of all, any hello elbow, screwballs aside. I'll talk about the screwball in a second. Screwballs aside, that is when we're going to see elbow pain. I've had girls come to me with like bicep tendonitis from that kind of like pull motion, shoulder pain. The other really interesting thing that has happened pretty much every single time, this is really crazy because every single pitcher who has come to me having done hello elbow transitioning to whip after the first lesson, they look at me and they go, and they're looking at their hand. I'm like, what's wrong? Is your hand okay? And they're like, every time I would pitch before and doing hello elbow, my hand would always be really swollen at the end of every lesson. And it's not today.
Oh, dang.
And it's like just this like aggressive motion of pulling up, and you get like all this like tension and constriction causing like the hand to swell, and they're feeling staying loose. And they would be like, oh my gosh, my hand isn't swollen and red. And it's like, this should be like the sign to you that what you were doing before was not correct. The screwball. So definitely, if you are a hello elbow pitcher and you're trying to deliver a
Mm.
screwball that way, oh yeah, really bad elbow problems. For me, this is probably an unpopular opinion. I'm going to have a lot of like hate for this probably. I don't like screwballs. That
I
being
thought,
said, I do have a lot of pitchers who throw very nice screwballs. For me, the screwball is the pitch that truly breaks the least. It's more of like a running pitch as opposed to like a true like breaking pitch, like the rise, the curve, the drop. Um, and to me, sometimes a really, really, especially if you throw at like a certain speed, a really, really well placed inside fastball is just as good. Um, but that being said, I would agree. So for us, the screw, we teach it still like really low and loose in the
yeah,
arm. So that really minimizes the chance for injury. That is the second to last pitch normally that we
yeah,
teach. We always start with the drop, the turnover drop, because it's most similar to the fastball. And
yep.
then we kind of let them pick. We're like, do you want to do a curve? Do you want to do a screw? Our last pitch typically is the rise, just because we have found that the best rises with like true rise spin and true rise break comes when you're hitting at least the upper 50s,
Yes. I love
and also requires the quickest and loosest wrist and fingers, which is developed through learning the other movement pitches first.
Yeah,
So
and it's the most posterior pitch to pitch.
yeah,
Like you have to stay so posterior. So
yes,
if you can't get proper sequencing in your fastball, why the heck am I going to teach you a rise ball? Like I'll
yeah,
teach you the spin. Like I have no problem, giving girls extra homework, double ball drills with the rise ball because let's get our wrist going and then a year down the road if you're hitting that speed, that's another thing that people want to push back on, but she needs to be putting the ball in high, does she though? Because like Kat Osterman said it best when she was like, your 10U players need to get really bored with throwing a fastball and a changeup.
yes. And you shouldn't get bored with throwing a fastball and changeup, because really well placed fastballs and changeups can get you so many strikeouts.
Yes,
Like,
and that's what she was saying. She was like, don't
yes.
be so eager to move on. Get really good that you're bored, right? And I have a little 10U pitcher who they're getting ready to go. I think they're like on their way to officially going 12U. And this little girl, whoever laid her foundation did right by her. And then she came in to work with me and it has been amazing. And she's just one of those kids she's got the little kid body, but her brain is, she's like 16, 17.
Those are the best
Yes.
students. Like I
But I
love
have
that.
to always be like her. I have to kind of stand in the gap for her when on her bad days because she wants to get onto herself, or if she pitches with older pitchers. Because I have her in one of my intermediate groups because she
Yeah.
mentally can hang. She physically can
Yeah.
hang with these girls. The only thing she is not able to do yet is she can't hit 55, right? And so when
One of
she sees
yeah.
that, she's like, I'm not as fast. And I'm like, slow your roll, homie. Like, you will
One
be there.
one of the oldest videos my dad made on YouTube was called Hurry Up and Wait.
Ooh,
Um, and it was basically about, and it's not just the pitchers either, it's the parents, honestly. Why isn't my 9-year-old daughter throwing in the 60s? Why are we not hitting this speed after like a couple of lessons? And especially when we talk about young pitchers, the pitchers who are just starting out, the 8Us, the 10Us, the 12Us. These are girls who are not fully grown and
hmm.
likely have never done strength training because, quite frankly, they're a little bit too young to be doing Olympic lifting, and who have not grown to their full heights.
Mhm.
Their muscles are not fully developed. Even the ones who are growing, I'm going to talk about growth spurts in a second
Mhm.
because worst
Yeah.
enemy of a pitcher, honestly. Um, so my dad made this video, Hurry Up and Wait, basically saying that even if you are a 10-year-old with really good mechanics, the likelihood of you throwing as hard as a 16 or 17-year-old who is fully developed, who may not have as good mechanics, is very small. And there's literally only one factor, and that is your age and the fact that you are not fully developed. So he made this video, Hurry Up and Wait, like, look, you're looking for like one special drill that's going to all of a sudden make your pitcher throw in the 60s. It doesn't exist.
Right.
You need to grow. You need to make sure that you're learning the correct foundation as you're growing. And then one day when you're fully developed and you're doing strength training, you're going to be hitting that 60-mile-an-hour mark and beyond. And growth spurts. So even the pitchers who are getting taller and growing, this has happened a couple of times. You might have a pitcher who's like really solid when they're young, and then all of a sudden, within a short time, they've like grown 5 inches. And now all of your bones and everything are getting longer and stretching out, and the ligaments and the muscles are trying to play catch up. So everything's super unstable. Your core is weak. Everything gets weaker, and there's so much instability that their parents come back. They're like, I don't know what happened. Oh, it's like she doesn't know how to pitch anymore. Like her mechanics are all over the place. That is also normal
Yeah. It's
because you are like losing so much strength and so much stability in these young years when you are going through growth spurts and you haven't done strength training yet. This is why I always recommend like to my youngish pitchers, like my 12Us who like are getting close to being able to start serious strength training, but maybe not quite yet. Talk to a physical therapist and have them like evaluate you and see like where your weaknesses are, or at least just give you kind of like overall exercises to keep your joints stable, your core strong. And that can really help a lot. But I have seen mechanics go out the window during very big and like rapid, as in like happening in a short period of
yeah.
time, growth spurts. And pitchers get worried. They're like, I feel like I've forgotten how to pitch. I'm never going to. And I'm like, you just grew 5 inches in like a couple months.
Yeah.
And it's going to be okay. And that also is when injuries happen a lot.
Hmm.
So a lot of times when even though when mechanics are good, you go through that growth spurt and everything is so weak that you can see injuries to that too. So that's also why it's so important to make sure you're learning the correct mechanics, because imagine learning poor mechanics and going through that growth spurt. That's like recipe for just like a chronic injury.
Oh yeah. And
So
then let's throw in the equation of going from 10U to 12U. I feel like for me, that's when I see the biggest premature opening in that push foot because
that
they're
I would
trying so hard to get off the mound. And I'm like, whoa, stop. Like, stay in your lane. Your everything is going to adapt. Everything is going to come together. Like your dad's video, hurry up and wait. It's gonna happen. Trust me,
exactly,
you know.
exactly.
But
I
the
would
moment
say,
you sacrifice that drag, that
oh,
anchor, that broken ankle drag, when I have girls that come to me with that already built into their foundation,
Hard
I
to
have
break.
found that to be one of the harder things to break. But now I'm starting to see the the track part of the pitch. So I'm going to use a lot of your verbiage. I like a lot. Like I do a 4 parts of the pitch thing: load, reach, track, drive with my girls to get them to understand that's you. You did that for me, and I'm pushing that down here. So I don't take credit. I always say that's from Jill, like fast pitch power. So
That's
I
for my
break
dad.
it down.
That was all my dad's
Your dad
terminology.
too.
I'll give
Like,
him
I
the
mean,
credit.
that's just
Yeah.
legacy work right there. But what I started to notice is when they prematurely open
Mhm.
in that initial push, drive off the mound, they'll straighten their back leg. They completely lose all bend and they go
Mhm.
onto the medial aspect of their foot versus just coming off the mound like they're a runner coming out of blocks, going straight to that toe.
I would, yep. It's so funny you bring this up. So in Fast Pitch Power Plus, everyone there gets a video analysis when they join. And oh, I have a Stanley too.
Ah, yay. Love it.
um, everyone gets a video analysis when they join. I would say the number one issue that I see in, I would say it's happened in every single video analysis I've done, and I've done hundreds, literally hundreds, is opening too early. So either starting to already open in the load, so like your whole body turns, which then makes you already open when you get to the reach, or you have a good, like a okay load position, but you still just kind of immediately pull everything open into that reach. Opening too early. What if you ask any of the people who've gotten analyses from me, what I will say is creates a domino effect of other mechanical issues throughout the remaining stages of the pitch. Opening the hips and the shoulders immediately in the reach is the leading cause of leaping and crow hopping because, like you said, you lock out that back leg and it's really difficult to keep the weight on that back leg because if you did, would cause a lot of hip pain. And
Right.
that's why we see the pitchers who open too soon and have that very severe foot collapse, often complaining of hip pain, low back pain, knee pain, and things like that. And then by opening too early, it also makes it very difficult for your hands to be reaching the correct spot. And what you'll likely see is something like this.
Flying open.
Then comes around your body. Now the arm is stuck behind your body instead of on the power line. So now, because my arm is stuck behind me, I'm going to have to break down my mechanics in some way by either bending or
Mm.
over rotating to try and get my arm back into the correct arm slot. So that's going to make it so I can't whip and snap correctly. I'm going to get into that drag foot collapse position, that zombie leg position. So now my back leg is acting like an anchor and I have to use more of my upper body to deliver instead of my lower half just from that opening too early.
And then you're over the front of your
Yep.
pitch. And it
Yes.
drives me nuts when coaches down here like stand tall in your pitch, stand tall. And I'm looking, going, you don't even know where the stand tall is supposed to happen. Like, stop telling her to do that because if they're not taught, the stand tall is what happens at the end. So you're
Mm-hmm.
finishing with your back end and you're not finishing with your front end.
Yes,
And
exactly.
so
You have
they
to,
think they just need to
yeah.
stand tall. And I'm like, no, it's at the end. You want the nose, the belly button behind the toes. There's an angle that you want your body to be in on that front side.
Stacked. Yes, you want to be stacked when you deliver.
Yep.
There's going to be slight, like if you're throwing a drop, like very slight
Correct.
forward, but you're still like, I think even for that, you should not be like flying forward.
Right.
It's just a very slight like shift of your weight forward. There's still front side resistance in a drop.
Yes.
There's still like, like good posture and balance and stability in a drop. There's no pitch you're going to throw where your upper body should be like falling all over the place.
Right.
But when you hear those coaches say like stay tall in your pitch, what they also don't realize is like if these pitchers who like have opened and their foot is collapsed and their leg is were locked out, like lock out your leg and try to stand up tall in that. Their
Yeah.
leg would snap, like they can't with those mechanics. So again, that's why the foundation is so important. So
It's
important.
very important. And that brings me to the next. If we talk more pull side, um, down here, I think before I moved down here, because I was up north, I was in Flagstaff for 12 years. And I worked with pitchers there. And now that I've came down here, like I'm seeing everything. But I would say probably 5 years ago, there was just a trend going around where pitchers were actually taught to get sideways, and they would land their plant foot at 3 o'clock or at 9 o'clock if they were a lefty. And one of my bigs, she plays for an 18U Storm team here. Last year, she witnessed one of their pitchers who pitched like that buckle and blew her push knee, or her pull knee, excuse me. So when she planted, she completely broke.
Oh,
And I'm just like, so when she called me and told me, she was like, Coach, like I've always understood what you meant, but like I literally witnessed it. Like it happened. And they do that. But I think what's hard for like you and I, Jill, is this is where I get really confused. Is I'll watch a D1 game. Like I just went down to Tucson and watched U of A and UCLA play on the field. It was awesome. And I was watching Devin's mechanics, and I had like some valid questions. You know, I'm not going to ask her, but as I'm watching that video in slow-mo, I'm like, weird. It almost looks like she's doing a walkthrough. Like, how is this even legal? Like, obviously something's right, but it's one of those things that where little kids see that and then they think they can pitch like that. And I'm like, no. We got to build our house first. Then we can add the interior paint. We can bring in the furniture and the nice roofy sink. Like, hurry up and wait.
And that does also go back to the thing I said in the beginning of like this successful pitcher with less than optimal mechanics.
Yes.
Like just copy them because look how successful they are. When like in reality, you could be like really putting your young pitcher at risk for pretty bad injury.
Yeah.
But I found that with Hello Elbow, as far as like positioning of your body, there was like one of two things taught with it. My dad liked to call it, usually what you would see is the open door, closed door with Hello Elbow, but sometimes you'd also see open and stay all the way open.
Yes.
And I'm always like, neither of those are correct. So it's that, feeling the correct amount of rotation, that upper and lower body separation when you deliver is really important. It's really similar. Something we love to do too is relate the pitching motion to a swing when you're batting.
Me too.
Really similar. Now, obviously there's not going to be like a drive through when you're batting, and your arms are going to finish up and across your body because you're swinging a bat. But as far as the upper lower body separation, the hip rotation, the front side resistance, the leading with the elbows, all pretty much identical for power K position and a swing. So that's another really good thing that we like to relate power K and the delivery to.
It teaches them so I love pitchers that are batters. I've had one PO and it was almost hard for me to get her to understand because she hadn't picked up a bat since she was about 14. And I'm like, yeah, like California thing. Like, oh, you don't want to bat anymore? Okay, you're a PO. Like, what? Like to me, you're just like dumbing somebody down. Like, I love telling my pitchers when they get in the box, I'll be like, okay, I need your pitcher's brain in the batter's box right now. You're going to keep it that simple. Our hip drive, leg drive, let's talk ground force. It's all the same. I love ground force sports. I don't know if you've ever used the Queen of the Hill.
I have two of them.
Man, see, that's another reason why you need to get out to the conference, because I was able to meet the engineer and he like sent me one of the pink ones. He was like, oh my gosh, we love what you're doing. And like literally on my doorstep.
I want a pink one.
Yeah. And they only make so many a year of the pink ones. So it's just like, but understanding his reasoning, like the way his brain was working to create that, I was like, I love using it because it speaks volumes to our athletes that are audible learners or even visual learners. And I feel like it's our job as a coach. We get these kids and it's our job to accept, number one, they're built differently, and number two, they learn differently.
I love the Queen of the Hill. I really don't recommend hardly ever like any pitching tools. Like if you've seen me like on Instagram, I'm not advertising anything really, other than like Fastpitch Power Plus and stuff. But that is the one thing that I will always talk about, because I think it is so helpful and you can use it for so many things: explosiveness off the rubber, working on front side resistance. And it really does give you that audible feedback so that your pitchers are aware of the kind of ground force that they're creating, which is where like when you want to talk about how do I get faster, the primary source of speed is that initial explosiveness off the rubber, and then the front side resistance combined with your loose fast whip. And the Queen of the Hill really is probably my favorite pitching tool